But you manifest it slowly, so fuck the fantasy. It's your motherfucking moment. Hey, welcome to my channel. My name is Kadira. Thank you for joining me today. We get into self-care and well-being on this channel. So let's tune in for the video to talk about law of assumption, one of my favorite topics to talk about. So what is law of assumption? Law of assumption is the mirror effect, that what you dominantly entertain within yourself creates your outer reality.
My mother gave us aphorisms to learn as children. And there are two that stand out foremost in my mind. One is the inner reality creates the outer form.
So a lot of what's been going on social media about law of assumption, there are so many creators, and I love that. That is how I found out about law of assumption, which was around 2022, March of 2020. And I don't believe in signs as much as I used to, but I really felt like at that time it was a sign because it was talking about self-concept work and standing in your power. And at that time, I really needed to hear that. Law of assumption was pioneered by Neville Goddard. He found out about law of assumption through a man named Abdullah, who was originally from a black man from Ethiopia. And they met in New York. They connected and they became friends. Neville Goddard was originally from Barbados. He was born in Barbados, but he hadn't been in so long. So he was ready to go back. He was excited to go back to Barbados, but he didn't have any money. Because he didn't have any money, he was talking to Abdullah about it and everything. And Abdullah was like, well, think as if you're already there. And Neville Goddard thought he was crazy. And he's like, okay, what? He's like, every night before you go to sleep, think as if you're already there. I'm kind of summarizing what happened, but he told Neville to think as if he's already there. Think as if you're already in Barbados. You're already there. And so Neville was like, okay. So Neville did that for a few months before he went to sleep. And throughout the day, just kind of as if he was already in Barbados. Rewind a few months later, Neville's brother, who he hadn't heard from in a while, called him it's time to go back home. I bought you a ticket. So we're all the family's going to go back home to Barbados. And Neville was just in shock. What? He had been wanting to go. So that was his manifestation coming true. And he went to Barbados for a month. He stayed there. He had the most amazing time. And then Abdullah started to be his mentor and started to coach him and teach him more about law of assumption. I'm not sure if Abdullah coined the term law of assumption or if Neville coined it, but somehow it became law of assumption. Neville Goddard essentially started teaching about law of assumption to other people and created this big audience around it. And this was 1940s, 50s maybe. My introduction of law of assumption was through TikTok. At the time, I was ready to transform my life. I was ready to make a change. I was I'm tired of making the same old choices. And I was always self-reflective in the past, but I had hit a wall to an extent when it came to a certain area in my life. And I was ready to do something differently. I was ready for a change. I was ready. And I feel like it was always meant to be for me to find out about law of assumption because me and Neville Goddard shared the same birthday. And when I found out about law of assumption, I was just in such a rough place. I was in a place of I don't know what to do. I don't know what's next. And law of assumption really, I learned so many things about myself through law of assumption. And that is why I say it has changed my life. First and foremost, I learned how to regulate my nervous system. I learned about how important the nervous system is to changing and shifting and transforming our lives. When you learn about law of assumption, the first step that most people teach is self-concept. And self-concept is basically the way you perceive yourself in relation to life, in relation to relationships, platonic and romantic, in relation to money, in relation to health, in relation to all these things that are a part of life. But it's essentially the way you perceive yourself. And my self-concept at that time was no bueno. Okay, I did not see myself in the best light. Self-concept first was a game changer for me because it really shifted the way that I saw myself. And it made me pay attention to the way that I was thinking and the way I would like interact with people during conversations and talk about myself to people. You know, it made me pay attention to things, which then, since I was aware, it made me be like, oh, you know, like, okay, let's do things differently. Let's make a different decision. That sounds easy in words, but it really was not easy to do because I had thought about myself in such a way for so long that shifting that really took effort and energy and consistency. And part of law of assumption is shifting your self concept so that you can transform your life. Because often I would change certain things in my life or even like self reflect in the past, but then that would change for a little bit. But then I would still be down. I would still dwell. I would still get emotional. I would still be in this place of frustration. Ultimately, I was stuck. So shifting my self concept and learning about self concept really changed the way that I saw myself. One way is to shift the way you talk to yourself. So instead of talking down on yourself, even if you maybe have nothing nice to say, you start paying attention to the way you speak about yourself to other people and the way you speak to yourself, you know, internally, how you think about yourself. So that was my first step, was like shifting there first was the key. And the next step was flipping thoughts. So the thing about thoughts is you cannot subtract them, right? You cannot subtract them. The only thing that will do is if you try to remove a thought, it'll increase that thought. When it comes to your thoughts and flipping thoughts, changing thoughts to be in your favor, it does take regulating your nervous system, which is another thing that I learned through law of assumption. In order to shift the way you think about yourself, like permanently, to create sustainable transformation and change, what I've learned through law of assumption is you do have to shift your nervous system. You have to regulate your nervous system. You can't be in this fight or flight anxious mode all the time, or as if somebody or something is always out to get you. You have to regulate your nervous system to be of ease, to be of relaxation, to be in a space where you can welcome and be receptive to new ways of thought, to new perceptions, and new ways of being. Nervous system regulation is a big, big key in law of assumption. In the whole manifestation community, regulating your nervous system is something that you'll hear about all the time. And before law of assumption, I hadn't heard about regulating my nervous system. I hadn't heard about any of that. And I was in therapy before. And therapy was really great. And I'll also make a video about that as well. But in terms of, nobody taught me about regulating your nervous system. I didn't even know what that was. I didn't even know what that meant before learning about LOA. Like, hadn't heard of it before at all. So once you learn how to regulate your nervous system through breath work, through EFT tapping, through meditation, through cold plunges, there's so many different ways to regulate your nervous system. But those were like the first ones that I was introduced to and the ones that I still use to this day. Law of assumption is big in the manifestation community. Now, before I had found out about law of assumption, I had always heard about law of attraction because I had heard about The Secret when I was in high school. I, kind of understood it and got into it. I'm like, okay, this is dope, but I didn't like apply it to my life at that time. So I knew of law of attraction, but I never heard of law of assumption before finding out. I was never into manifestation like before 2022. Like, I had a friend a little before then who was heavy into manifestation, and she would always tell me about it. She hadn't told me about law of assumption or law of attraction, but she would just talk about manifestation. And I grew up in a very religious household. I myself, once I turned 18, I didn't classify myself as being religious, but as being more spiritual, as having a connection and being in tune with God, but not being religious. So, but I still had that programming, right? That still had that religious programming because I grew up in a very religious household. So whenever I heard about manifestation, I always thought, okay, it's like, some type of magic, right? And I was just like, When my friend at the time, when she would tell me about it, I was just like, I don't know. Like, I don't even know what I don't know, you know. But then once I found out about law of assumption, I got more into manifestation. Law of assumption was kind of like my opening to manifestation. And I think it was easy for me to tune in with it because I was able to apply it to my real life. I was able to take concepts like self concept and regulating my nervous system, and I saw that it worked for me. I saw that it helped me. So that got me into the manifestation community. And then I started learning more. I started looking up other creators, and I got into a manifestation community actually that was super helpful for me. And just listening to people who were already into it for years and their tips and their suggestions and their advice on how to start and really regulate my nervous system and really transform my self concepts and transform my life ultimately. So those were like the biggest pieces for me. And then there's also some pieces in there that were nice, like learning about how to transform your health, learning about how to transform your relationships, how to transform your relationship with money, just all different things, all different tips. And that is why I'm speaking to you today, because law of assumption has transformed my life. Okay. It has helped me, like, and just it's not just about the words, you know what I'm saying, or the concept or the idea, but it's about the actions that you take when you're in the law of assumption community. You learn how to be still, you learn how to be regulated, you learn how to pay attention to life, like really pay attention, because life is really simple, but we complicate it with our thoughts, with our emotions, with a whole bunch of different things. We think that it's complicated because it feels challenging, and life is challenging sometimes, but it's very simple. And through law of assumption, you learn that. You learn how life truly is your oyster, like your world, like your specific life, your specific world is your oyster, and it can be what you desire for it to be. Not every single thing is going to go your way outside of you, but you have the power and are in charge of your choices within your life. And law of assumption taught me that. I was somebody that I used to rely on God for everything to make it happen for me. And don't get me wrong, I do think that's amazing. And I think that God is there to guide us and to assist us. But God is not there to do it for us. Or whether you believe in the universe, a higher power, whoever you believe in, God is not there to do it for us. Like, God has given us the power, the capabilities, the potential within us to do it for ourselves and guide us along the way and to provide assistance. But I was somebody that I would basically rely on God. Like, I would do enough, but I wasn't doing what I desired to do. And I used to always hold myself back. That used to be my thing. Like, I used to say that. I used to always hold myself back, and I don't understand why. I don't understand how to get out of it. Regulating my nervous system, shifting my self concepts, and just learning different things and just paying attention and slowing down, shifting my perception, helped me to shine, to film YouTube videos, which I always desired to do for so long, but I never had it in me to just go for it and do it. But me regulating my nervous system, me feeling different about myself, me going a little deeper and understanding that this is my life and I am in charge of my choices, really helped me to do what I'm doing right now. Really helped me to make different changes in my life. Really helped me to get to a different space in my life and to say no to things that I really meant no to. Not just say yes when I really meant no. So this is why I advocate for law of assumption. What I've learned from it, I have taken through every aspect of my life, regulating my nervous system, my self concept. Like, I learned how to really, really embody my worth as a human being and as me by regulating my nervous system. This is why I talk about it so much, and I will talk about it forever. Part two, I will go over a few resources and a few ways that you can incorporate it in your life, because law of assumption is not just meant to be used for people who are in the manifestation community, right? I feel like law of assumption can help anybody in any way of life, in any term of life, wherever you are on your journey of life. So, in part two, I'll go over a lot more about resources and how you can also get in tune with your nervous system, shifting your self concept, as well as getting a little bit more into law of assumption. So, thank you for joining me. And don't forget to always take care of yourself. I'll see you in the next one.